So as energy is so important to understanding the principle of least action, I'm going to try and explain energy to you, the most famous equation. I can't explain the whole of energy to you, that's a big thing, you'll have to read my other book. I'm going to try and explain the most famous equation in physics, which is E equals mc squared. And don't worry, there won't be any maths, and in fact, well, probably regulations don't allow us to lock the doors, but no one is to leave this room until they have understood it. And you will. So E equals mc squared. Did that come through, by the way? Well, you will understand it. So E is energy, m is mass, and c is the speed of light. Okay, now in order to do this, we're going to need a demonstration. Then everyone knows that, well, physics is an experimental subject. I'm not quite ready, Murray, but Murray's going to stand here. He's my husband, and he's been helping so incredibly much. Yeah. It's based on Einstein's thought experiment in 1905, and we can't exactly demonstrate a thought experiment, so we're going to demonstrate a real experiment, which was devised by Hermann Bondi, Professor Hermann Bondi, who was a professor of physics at King's College London at the time I was a student there. And yes, Murray, you can come and set us up now. So I don't know if you want everyone to close their eyes, avert their vision. We're a little bit dubious that this is going to work, because we had to pack it and take it through security and unpack it and do soldering and whatnot in a hotel bedroom and hope the smoke detectors didn't go off. And it's the hottest day. Watch and wait. Wow! I am so impressed. I think Murray deserves a clap. And from this, you are going to learn about E equals mc squared. Okay. Now, first of all, what can you deduce about what's inside the box without even looking in it? Okay, so you're going to be a bit like Poirot or Jonathan Creek and extract information. And the first thing you know, all of you, is things don't just move for no good reason. There's got to be something. What about the energy? Energy is conserved. You have to pretend that there isn't all this gubbins here. We were going to get a shield, and you would have just seen a box isolated. But in effect, it is. There's no Wi-Fi. You know, we could have made the box a bit bigger. If we ever do this again, we'll try that. And so all of this would have been inside. So that would have been even more beautiful, I grant you. You would have just seen a box, happily sitting there, minding its own business, and all of a sudden, it decides, I'm going to go that way. Okay. So, what you know is, that took energy. Energy doesn't come from nowhere, so there must be energy in that box, stored, potential energy. In effect, a battery. And here it is. Okay, but we could have sneaked it and put it in the box so it's hidden, right? Okay, a battery. And then it converts the potential energy into the energy of motion. So if you deduce that, you've deduced a lot about the contents of the box without even having to look in there. But there's so much more. Okay, the next thing requires you to know what momentum is. But you all do know, if you've either been a passenger in a car or a driver of a car or any other vehicle, and that pretty well covers all of you, I should think. So you're driving along and you see a lorry ahead of you going at about 100 kilometers per hour, and you know that you better give it a bigger stopping distance, hang back, give it a lot of space, as compared to a small car, a deux chevaux or what have you, going at the same speed. Probably can't go at that speed, I don't know, at 100 kilometers per hour, because it's got less momentum. Momentum is mass times velocity. The second thing you have to know is that there's, just like there's only a certain amount of energy must be conserved in the system, the total amount of momentum, well, I should say momentum can be added, that's the second, you need to know what momentum is, that it can be added, and the total amount of momentum in an isolated system has to be constant. Alright? That's about as hard as it gets, this whole explanation. If you can grab hold of that, you're okay. So, in other words, what we can deduce, actually, which way did it go, the box? It went that away, didn't it? That away, okay. Yeah, otherwise it would have fallen. If the box goes that away, there must be a mass inside that went that away. That's the big thing you've got to deduce from it. So you're all happy with that, aren't you? Okay? Now, in this case, that is because not only is momentum conserved, but it happens to be zero in this case. Okay, because the box isn't moving now, it wasn't moving at the start, so even though it was moving in the middle of the demonstration, that meant that as much momentum from this box has a certain mass, the box going that way, a mass inside had to be going that way. Okay? I'll wait for this. So, in effect, what we have is a gun that triggered with a timer and powered by a battery that fires a bullet. So you can imagine we could have had a lot of trouble with airport security. We were certainly wondering about this because we've come over from France just a few days ago. But luckily, they just weren't bothered at all. So, yeah. Afterwards, ask me and you can look inside there. It's very interesting. So what happens is the box moves, and in order for momentum to be conserved, there must be redistribution of mass, and mass must appear at the other end, opposite from the gun. Just hold on to that key fact. Okay. Now, the next thing is, I didn't say how heavy that box was. How many kilograms or grams. I didn't say how fast it went and what distance you saw. But that conservation of momentum law has to apply whatever mass. The box could be as big as a container that goes on a ship to Australia. It could be as big as an oil tanker. It could be as big as a planet. And it could go slowly or it could go fast. Talking of fast, this was Einstein's thought experiment. He thought, supposing we have a flash gun, a gun at one end, which flashes light, and then the light goes from one end to the other. And of course, light goes incredibly fast, faster than anything else. In order to understand this, we have to agree that light has momentum, which isn't a very obvious thing, but it was known well before Einstein. So, for example, one of the bits of evidence is that you have comets, and the tails of comets are actually pushed away from the direction of the sun by the radiation pressure of all that light coming out of the sun, solar radiation pressure. So you just have to grant that light has momentum. And there are very fine experiments that can show it. Actually, you get those things in opticians' windows sometimes where something rotates and you shine a torch on it, on this little vein. But in fact, it's pretty difficult. It's not possible to argue that from momentum conservation. You really need a little vein hanging on a quartz fibre or something. And it's a very delicate experiment, but it can be done. And you shine light on it and it makes the thing move like that. So anyway, we'll grant that light has momentum. How much does the box move? Well, not very much if you had a light gun. This is the bit where we have to imagine it, obviously. It's a very fine experiment. It's not as if when you take a flash photo that you're suddenly thrown backwards by the recoil. Okay? So you're allowed to laugh at that bit. Okay. So imagine we do this experiment. We have our flash gun and we open it up. Well, actually, before I say that, I'll say we have the flash gun at one end, and then the light goes. We could have a mirror behind the flash gun to collect any light that is reflected that way. To collect it, gather it up and push it that, make it go that way, okay? And then we don't want the light to keep on bouncing back and forward. So at this far end, we don't have another mirror. In fact, we have the opposite. We have black paint. The inner surface can be painted with black paint to absorb the light, okay, so that it will actually come to a stop. So now, so you're all happy with that. A flash gun and the light goes whoosh, and stops instead of bouncing back and forth, all right? Now, you open the box, and what do you find? Nothing. There's no mass there. But then, when you feel the black paint, it feels warm to the touch. And then you think, as Einstein thought, I wonder if you can say that that warmth, that heat energy, is mass. And he thought, yes, that's the answer. And so, E, the energy, equals M. So you might be a bit stupefied now and think, what about C squared? E equals mc squared. And that can be explained pretty simply. C, as you know, is a constant. Well, maybe you don't know, so I'll tell you. So the speed of light in a vacuum is a constant. It's a very big speed, but you could just as well call it 1, if you like. I mean, I'm only 1.5 meters tall, but we could say it's 1 Jennifer unit of height, if you like. So we could say that the speed of light has the unit of 1, and then 1 times 1, c squared, 1 times 1 is still 1, so E equals m totally comes out correctly. That isn't a cheat, actually, because particle physicists and lots of other physicists, they do set C equal to 1, because they don't like to do calculations with a lot of difficult units, and that's exactly what they do. But nevertheless, I don't blame you for thinking you've been shortchanged, and if you do want to see actually E equals mc squared and not just E equals m, you can go into my website, www.jennifercoopersmith.com, and you look at the article that's called E equals mc squared, a simple demo. Scroll down to the very bottom, and you will actually see all the calculations there. It's school maths. It's not even uni maths, and it doesn't assume C equals 1. It's correct, and you get E equals mc squared coming out of it. But you know what? If you're not particularly interested or you don't like maths that much, I wouldn't bother, because you have got it. E equals m.